Hi, I'm Karen down in Ripley, and I invite you to join me on a recent, unexpected side trip to Brittany, France during the 80th anniversary of the city of Plélo's liberation celebration and learn why Americans and Bretons celebrate their shared DNA from World War II. A last-minute decision to deliver my father's World War II documents to the city of Plélo, France, opened me up to an amazing experience that has truly changed my life. I ask that you join me so that you too can know and appreciate how we Americans are respected and revered because our ancestors fought to liberate the town of Plélo in August 1944. During the Plélo liberation festivities, other oral traditions surfaced. Mélanie's grandfather shared his memory of World War II as a child, saying, "When I was a young boy, we would have to hide in the barn or in the fields when we saw the Germans moving around. We knew where everything was hidden. Our families would hide our silver, our food, and our weapons. Everything had to be underground. We were terrified of being captured." Mélanie's grandfather made me think of the little tarnished silver-plated milk pitcher my daddy gave me. He shared one of the Downing family's oral traditions when he told me that my ancestors hid the little Revolutionary War pitcher from invading soldiers during the later Civil War. We heard of the bravery of the men and women of Plélo, not just the resistance fighters, but the ordinary citizens just trying to survive and navigate the war. The ordinary can often be the most outstanding weapon of war. As an example of Plélo's oral tradition, Bretons revere World War II bicycles and the brave women who risked everything to ride them to deliver food and information in support of the resistance. As I was admiring a vintage bicycle, a man looked at me and said, "You see that bicycle there? That's how we won the war." He went on to say that the men had to hide out. They could not be seen by the Germans, who would immediately arrest them on sight. Once arrested, the men would become slaves to build roads, move dead horses out of the way, or any labor the Germans could get out of them. The worst thing that could happen to you as a young man was to be pulled into any kind of group that the Germans wanted to work to death. Toward the ends of the evening, Burt and I are getting tired and decided to walk from the stadium back to the town where Mélanie had parked her car in front of the mayor's office, near where the church was located. Mélanie had brought one of her brothers to meet us. She and her brother wanted to show Burt and I something, so we began walking with him around the square. I was wearing high heels as part of my costume. Wearing heels is a rarity for me since I retired. Although my feet were killing me, I was curious and happy to follow them. We walked to Plélo's World War II monument, and it was also shared by World War I. And as we read the names on the monument, we noticed that Mélanie's mother's family name was all over both the World War I and World War II monuments. When we commented, Mélanie said, "Yes, my family went to both wars as military men." Mélanie then walked us around the square to a house on the corner, opposite the church, where the Germans had lined up the villagers to be shot. She then told us this is the house they call the Resistance House. When the Germans were getting ready to kill everybody, they were dragging people out of this house who they believed were with the resistance. These were some of the first men and women they intended to kill. She went on saying, "I learned about this house in school when I was 11 years old. We are taught about our history in World War II at that age. We learn about the liberation in World War II and how Colonel Hamsley and his 20 men came to save us."
I remember the first time I saw Colonel Hamsley. I was 11 years old, and we had studied at school what had happened in Plélo. I remember it was a Saturday morning. We all met at the school, and then we set off together. We stood along the side of the road to welcome Colonel Hamsley, who arrived in a Jeep. And we weren't far from the stadium, which was later named after him, Colonel Robert Hamsley. I also remember the reception that took place in the old gymnasium. For us, it was truly something unique. We had never experienced anything like that before. We also had small American and French flags that we waved along the roadside. And so inside the gymnasium, there was the reception. And there were many people there, American soldiers, with jeeps and equipment we had never seen before. So yes, it was a very memorable experience for us. My brother and I even asked the soldiers for their autographs. That too became a lasting memory.
Melanie and her brother then carefully unfolded an old flag from a tightly sealed container. I was amazed as they carefully held it up for us to see. I told her, "Thank you for showing us. This is so special. How wonderful that as a child you understood how important it would be to save this flag." Melanie then shocked me, saying, "Karen, I have talked to my brother, and we want you to have this flag." Well, I was dumbfounded, and I said, "Oh no, Melanie, this is your history." She protested, saying, "It's your history too. I've talked to my brother, and he agrees that you should have it." Her brother didn't speak any English and stood there smiling, offering me the flag. He handed me one end of the flag as he held the other end, while Melanie took a picture. Melanie then presses me to accept the flag, saying, "You must take the flag." And I was incredibly honored and humbled. I thought the treasure was way too precious for me to accept. But I did not want to appear ungrateful, so I said, "Thank you, I will take the flag. But in my last days, I will return the flag to you in Plélo."
Donc, je suis née à Plélo, à Saint-Blaise, au milieu des champs, sans voisins.
I was born in Plélo, in Saint-Blaise, in the middle of the fields. There were no neighbors, just a road and a dirt path right in front of the house.
À côté d'une ancienne décharge. Et donc,
in the summer, my brother and I used to go to a small cabin that my uncle had built next to an old dump site. And as we were walking along the path, we noticed that there were books, old books. So we thought, well, if there are books here, that must mean there are other things that were thrown away in the dump. So we went to take a look, and right away, we saw the flag. I still remember that flag. My brother helped pull it out of the hole, and then we brought it home. Our mother told us that it was probably a flag from the time of the liberation because it was old. And also because it had come from a house that had just been emptied, a house that had been sold and cleared out. So the new owners had thrown the old belongings into that dump. For us, it was clearly something to keep. It had value, and it still has sentimental value, even if it didn't necessarily belong to someone in the resistance. But I hope that this flag was brought out again at the end of the war. You can see that it's something a bit homemade. We kept it for a very long time, and I'm very happy that it eventually ended up with Karen. So I called my brother to ask him if it would bother him if we gave the flag to my new American friends. He said, "No, not at all. No problem on my side." So I was very happy to organize a meeting in the center of Plélo with Karen and Burt. I showed them the town, well, the town center. I showed them where the flag came from. I showed them the war memorials, because there are several. Then we walked around the village, and I also showed them where the house was, the Maison de la Grève. The Maison de la Grève is the place where the people of Plélo were supposed to be executed. I also showed her the road her father took when he arrived. And, well, it's an incredible story, almost like an American movie, really, because they truly arrived, just in time. After that, it would have been too late. So yes, it was a powerful moment that we all shared together. Very moving. And then Karen refused to take the flag back with her to the United States because for her, it didn't belong to America. She felt that since she didn't necessarily have descendants, it shouldn't leave. And I told her that it was part of her story too, and that even without descendants, she could create a museum in Plélo.
I now have the French flag in my home, and I honor it beside my father's flag. This precious gift from one descendant of the liberation to another was just one more amazing, emotional moment we shared in Plélo. Then all of a sudden in the distance over the Colonel Hamsley Stadium, an amazing firework display goes off. It was incredible. It was the best display I've ever seen. It was beautiful. It went on and on. We kept laughing as every time we thought it was over, it would start up again and again. Once again, Providence intervened, and there we were, descendants of the liberation, sharing the touching and moving moments of the anniversary of the liberation of Plélo. And Daddy, you were there with me. Please join me for the next episode of You Were There, Karen Beth, as we experience the final Plélo liberation celebrations before sadly leaving for our journey back home to Texas.